only about 13% of people are actually self-aware. Now, the other 87% actually thinks it's self-aware, but isn't.
Hey guys, welcome to today's show. We've got a special guest, Ian Cron. Ian is a New York Times bestselling author, psychotherapist, Enneagram teacher, also Episcopal priest. And we're going to talk about some of the mini books he's written, including his latest, The Fix, about how the 12 steps of recovery can work for all of us. Ian, I'm excited to see where we're going in today's conversation because you're a very diverse guy, a lot of areas of expertise. Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast.
Chris, thanks for having me, man.
Cool. So right off the bat here, let's talk a little bit, explain to our listeners and me really, a little about Enneagrams. Let's talk about those. What are they? How can they work for us?
Yeah. So actually it's the Enneagram. So
what
it's
did
not
I
a
say?
they, it's an it. Huh?
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So the Enneagram is a personality typing system. It teaches that there are, 9 basic personality styles in the world, one of which we gravitate toward and adopt in childhood as a way to protect ourselves, to feel safe, to navigate the new world of relationships in which we find ourselves. And each of those different types has a core motivation that powerfully influences how that type habitually and predictably acts, thinks, and feels from moment to moment, right? So if you think about the personality as the way I would define it in lay terms is it's just how you show up for life, right? You just regularly show up for life this way. And, the more we can know about ourselves, then the more freedom we have to make better choices, right? If we're not people who take the time to understand our patterns, then we become actually, subject to doing a lot of dumb stuff.
Amen to that. So you said we're kind of one, and we're kind of born with it. Are we blends of others? Are we more than one? And is there a chance we can change it over time? Or
yeah, it's a great question. So actually, you contain within yourself all 9 types.
Okay,
right? It's just that you're dominant in one, right? Like you camp out more in one than any of the others. It sounds more like you than the others, right? It doesn't mean you don't have traits of the others. It just means, man, this one really sounds like me, right?
Yeah.
And then, traditionally we say, look, your type is your type for life. Now that doesn't mean you don't change. It just means that a lot of the same core motivations and fears are sort of in place, from early on. As to whether or not it's nature or nurture, nobody knows. I mean, I've heard people come up with all kinds of, like, well, it's this or that. And I'm like, look, chances are it's both nature and nurture together. And ultimately how that works, I don't really know, nor do I think anyone else does.
Man. Okay. Well, I was hoping to find out the answer to that today, but if you don't know, then nobody knows.
No, I do know. And what I know is I don't know.
That's right. Can you give us a little overview of these 9 types?
Oh, yeah, sure. So the Enneagram 1 is called the improver. It used to call them the perfectionist. And these people, their core motivation is a need to be good, to perfect themselves, others, and the world around them, right? 2s are called the helpers. They have a need to really be liked. And now everyone wants to be liked, but 2s really want to be liked. They want to be, they really want to be appreciated. So they have a need to meet the needs of others. They're helping others when they're not very healthy is to kind of be a strategic helper. It's like, if I help you, then you're good. What I'm going to get in return here is appreciation and approval and love. And so there's a little bit of a contract there, right? 3s are called the achievers or the performers, and their unconscious motivation is a need to succeed, to appear successful, and to avoid failure at all costs. 4s are called the individualists, and their core need is to be special and unique in order to compensate for feelings of inadequacy or inner lack, right? Fives are called the investigators, and they have a need to gather information, particularly about niche subjects, right? They're the information junkies of the Enneagram, right? They're the most analytical number on the Enneagram, and what they want to do is they want to maintain or keep energy, right? Because they feel very depleted by relationships. They tend to be introverted and kind of, sometimes you experience them as being emotionally distant and kind of aloof,
Okay.
Sixes are called the loyalists. They have their core need is to feel safe, supported, and secure. Okay. And so there's a lot of anxiety for sixes in the world, right? Sevens are called the enthusiasts. And these are people who have a need to be constantly looking for new adventures, always looking for things that are stimulating, and they're very positive. They can be almost too positive sometimes, and they are always in search of stimulation and new things to do because they are actually afraid of feeling negative feelings or having negative thoughts, right? Like, it's like, I'm just going to keep moving as fast as I can to keep one step ahead of the bad feelings and thoughts, right?
Right.
Eights are called the challengers. Challengers have a need to assert strength and control over others in the environment in order to mask vulnerability and weakness. And then nines are called the peacemakers. And nines want to maintain connection with other people. They want to maintain inner and outer peace and harmony. And they oftentimes will struggle for nines is they have a lot of conflict avoidant tendencies, right? They just don't like conflict. They'll do a lot to avoid it.
Okay. Yeah. As you said, most or maybe a lot of them, I could see pieces of me. I'm like, okay, I'm a little of that. I'm a little of that, a little of that. And then some of them like, no, I'm not any of that one. I'm not any of that one. Is that pretty normal?
Yeah.
To be like, some of them are just no, and then maybe a handful of them are kind of me.
Yeah. So if you took my assessment, it's on my website, you would see that it would actually break down like by percentages, like which types are more like you than others. And it would sort of show you the hierarchy of your score.
And that's ianmorgancrone.com, right?
Yep.
All right. So we will get people to go check that out. So if you're curious about what you are, you can go there and find out. Now, I like the percentage thing. I haven't. So I did this just in preparation. I'm trying to prepare for this podcast, and I go and I take this test, and I'm shocked with what I see. It's not what I thought I was going to be.
What did you come out as?
I read over the 9, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to be kind of this one and this one. It told me 4 and then 1. It was like secondary 1, but mostly 4.
Interesting.
I know. And so now I'm like, is that true? Like, is that really me?
Did you read through the report?
I read through the abbreviated version of the report. I didn't read the detailed version.
Yeah. So did it tell you what kind of a 4 you were?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't know there were different 4s.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the test results, it'll tell you you're a social or a self-preservation or a 1-to-1-4. There's like 3 different subtypes, but
oh man, I got more work to do.
You got more work to do.
Okay.
So are you a very creative person?
I don't know.
You don't know if you are or not?
I mean, I don't think I'm like the stereotype creative person. I'm not like an artist, or a singer, songwriter. That's like what comes to my mind is somebody who creates things and makes things. So I don't know.
Yeah, read through the report. And I think, here's the thing about the Enneagram. If we start going down that wormhole, we're going to be doing that for hours.
Yeah.
I was just on an airplane yesterday with some guys, and one of the guys was a 4, and that was 4 hours from John Wayne Airport in California to Nashville of deep dive. That's the thing about the Enneagram. There's a lot to it.
So does everybody that you sit beside on a flight want to talk to you about their number?
Yeah.
Has anyone asked you what's your number?
I'm a 4.
No way. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Then I'm liking 4 now.
There you go.
All right. My assistant wanted me to ask you what number makes the best assistants.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you, I have a crack whip assistant. Now, your Enneagram type doesn't correlate necessarily with competencies, right? Like any number could be a great assistant, any of them. However, I will say, in my experience, a great combination is 2s. 2s make great assistants, in part because they're really attuned to what other people need, and they can read what you need before you know what you need.
Oh, that's good.
They're really good at anticipating. Like, okay, he's going to have a problem with that, so let me go take care of that before it happens. Like they're really good at sort of forecasting people's needs.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So how is the Enneagram, how does it differ from the other personality tests that are out there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've worked with them all, right? Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, DISC, Berkman, everything, and listen, I like all of them, right? Like anything that gives you more self-knowledge, I think is fantastic, right?
All right.
The more information you can know about yourself, the better off you're going to be, right? Now, the reason I like the Enneagram more than the others is a couple of reasons. One is that the Enneagram doesn't just tell you what you do, like just describes you to you. It actually tells you why you do it.
Okay.
So, for example, if you meet a guy that's an 8 and he's a challenger and he's just a larger than life personality, he's just really big and he's really a hard ass. You know what I mean? Like he's just a kind of, he's a man's man and he's just tough and kind of well defended and stuff. It's like, okay, great, nice description. But what we learn about the 8 is a lot of times all of that kind of macho posturing is to hide feelings of vulnerability and weakness. And
I thought I was going to be an 8.
Yeah, there's a 4 that can be kind of 8-ish,
Okay, but my 4, the thing that's neat is about both of those, the 4 and the 8 that I'm hearing, is they both are kind of trying to make up for a weakness.
Yes.
They're both trying to compensate for like a deep inner void.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the types in some ways are responding to a wound. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, and that would require some explanation. But, the other thing about the Enneagram that's so great is it doesn't just tell you what's great about you. It's also going to reveal what's not so great about you when you're not doing well, so that you're getting a full kind of high def picture of things. If you're looking for compliments, I wouldn't recommend the Enneagram. Go take Strength Finders. It's a inventory that's going to show you, for example, here's you at your best, here's you not at your best. And I don't know about you, but I need to know about what's not working for me as much as I need to know about what is working for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I wanted to ask you is, with this knowledge, as I go deeper and I find out what kind of 4 I am, right? And what parts of me are that 1 that it identified and stuff, as I figure these things out, the good and the bad, what can I do with that to improve?
Yeah. So, one thing is for sure, if you don't have a full picture of yourself, improvement's impossible, right? Like you want to find out where your weak game is,
okay.
Yep. So that you can begin to make conscious effort and attempts to become the best expression of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the Enneagram is it also kind of reveals a growth path, right? So for 8s, for example, I would say to an 8 that I'm working with in coaching, I'd say, look, man, you have to stop confusing vulnerability with weakness.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like you have to start to realize that vulnerability is actually what requires true courage. It's not being a tough guy. Being a tough guy is a defensive posture. You can still be a man and be vulnerable. And in fact, a man who is wisely vulnerable is, to me, more is stronger than a guy who is always hiding vulnerability.
See, that's why I'm not an 8. Now I get it, right? Because I'm super vulnerable. I'm telling everybody all the time about all my mistakes. So that explains it.
Yeah, that would be if you were an 8, that would not come naturally to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you could do it. You could learn to do it.
Right.
You would just have to burn more calories to do it. You'd have to more consciously think about it. You just do it naturally, like without even thinking about it. It doesn't cost. In fact, you probably get calories. You get energy from being vulnerable, right?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not as much with 8s. You have to. They're a little less trusting of other people than most types. They're a little suspicious of people's motives. And so they tend to play their cards very close to the chest and have very small circle of loyal friends with whom they might be vulnerable, but they're not vulnerable with, they don't widely share things about themselves.
They don't share all their problems on a podcast.
Not much.
Okay. This is great. So, that was kind of the individual level. What about like for an organization? How can we apply the knowledge of ourselves and others to kind of a teamwork, corporate structure? How can it benefit the whole organization to kind of know what the other people in your group are?
Yeah, well, like I said, you're into my bread and butter now because that's where I spend most of my time, right? I just got back from California. I was working with a private equity firm and helping them. I help people understand themselves and understand the people they work with. So interestingly, Cornell University did a study years ago of 50 or actually 72 high-performing CEOs, right? And they wanted to figure out what is it that made these people unusually successful at their jobs, right? And here's the line from the conclusion of the study. The key predictor of success among leaders is self-awareness. So it's not grit, it's not determination, it's not strategic planning, it's none of those things. It's self-awareness, right? And let's just define self-awareness as understanding how you show up for life and how it affects other people. And having the ability to monitor and regulate the way that you act, think, and feel so that you're moving through the world with as much emotional and wisdom as you possibly can as you interact with people, right? The big problem people have oftentimes, and leaders especially, is they presume that their way of seeing the world is normal. Therefore, anyone who sees the world differently than they do, they judge as being abnormal. Now, the fact of the matter is everybody takes in and processes life differently. 9 different types, 9 different ways of seeing the world, 9 different ways of processing information, 9 different ways of dealing with fear and anxiety, 9 different ways of, et cetera, et cetera. The more you know about yourself and the more you know about your team members, the more efficiently you're going to work together. You're going to have more trust. You're going to have better retention among employees. You're going to be able to know who to tap into who for what gifts. So and the list goes on and on, right? There are just so many benefits of understanding people, right? Because most of the problems leaders have in organizations they're personality problems. They're just running into personality problems, just not understanding other people all day long. And the Enneagram just removes so much of that stuff.
So you said the number one was self-awareness.
Yes.
Is that similar or does that overlap with emotional intelligence?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So some people would say that they're synonymous, right?
Okay.
But I think self-awareness is just this ability to stand back from your experience in the moment to observe the way that you're acting, thinking, and feeling, and you're able to see how it's landing on other people.
I like the way that's said, how it's landing on other people.
Exactly.
Some people,
right.
they say things maybe that they think are funny, for example, or intelligent, and they think they just really nailed it. And it's like some people, I'm like, can they not see how that landed? Do they not know that no one else thought that was the way they thought it was? Right.
Yes.
So that's kind of that lack of EQ or self-awareness, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to avoid those moments as much as we possibly can, right?
Sure.
And so it's just, I always tell people, like, the Enneagram isn't a perfect system. It's not a perfect model. In fact, I quote this guy in the book about who he was a very famous statistician. He says, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Now, that's a really good insight, right? Like, what the Enneagram is going to give you isn't a perfect high definition picture of what goes on inside of human beings, but it's going to give you about 10 or 20% more clarity about what's going on in other people. And if you think about it, to have 10 or 20% more clarity about other human beings is a giant evolutionary step forward.
Yeah, that's incredible. So if the people with the most self-awareness make the best leaders,
yes,
is there a certain number is there an Enneagram type that's the most self-aware? Like, is it possible to give people a test and determine who are going to be the best leaders?
Yeah. So actually, any type could be self-aware, right? So there have been studies done around self-awareness with people, and one of the studies was done by a woman named Dr. Tasha Urich, and she actually had a staggering, very sobering statistic. Only about 13% of people are actually self-aware. Now, the other 87% actually thinks it's self-aware, but isn't. And what's interesting is, here's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
People who are self-aware admit that very openly that they don't think they're self-aware enough.
Right.
People who think they're self-aware, right, and say, I'm a very self-aware person, tend to score lower on self-awareness. So
it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I worked with a CEO once, and I had gotten feedback from a lot of people who work with him about his leadership style. And to a person, they all said, Bob is not very self-aware, right? Like, Bob is just not a very self-aware guy. So I said to Bob, what I hear from your team is sort of almost to a person is that you're not very self-aware. And he got very defensive and angry, which was a red flag.
Right.
And then he said, I'm self-aware. Don't you think I'd know if I wasn't self-aware? And I went, oh boy.
Well, the definition
exactly
would tell us that the answer is no.
That's it.
Funny.
Exactly right.
Now, what about applying this to a family, applying this to a man wanting to become a better husband and father?
Yeah.
You're taking it into the corporate world as your bread and butter. Is anybody or you, or is this being looked at for inside of a family?
Absolutely. A lot of people write about it. That's not my forte, but I do know plenty about it, both from firsthand experience and also working with people. I cannot tell you the number of people who've told me that the Enneagram saved their marriage.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely.
Well, this is awesome. Let's hear it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories of it saving relationships with children. So, like, I'll give you an example. I was married 27 years when I learned the Enneagram. Began to, I was a therapist, so I was really studying it for the first time very, very deeply. And learned about my wife's type, learned about my type, and I was stunned. And we were in kind of a rough patch at that time in our marriage. We had just become empty nesters. There was a lot of transition going on. And I just was like, holy smoke. And I remember coming in a room where my wife was sitting reading her type, and she was crying. And I'm like, what's going on, baby? And she's like, well, I've just never read something that so perfectly described what my life feels like all the time inside. And I was like, I read it and I'm like, this is what's been going on inside of you. I've been together with you for 27 years, and only now I'm learning about these different, your way of seeing the world and the way that you feel about different things. It was revelatory. Like, it was like, a Damascus Road experience, like just the scales fell off my eyes. It's so helped me with parenting with older adult, like late teens, kids that were in their late teens.
Yeah.
I mean, and not only that, but it gave the whole family a language that we could use to talk about our inner experience that we never had before, right? We're all just kind of like doing the best we can to explain ourselves. But once I knew, for example, that my son was a 7 and that he really doesn't want to feel bad feelings. Like he is particularly afraid of feeling sad, stuck, routine, bored, disappointment. He's always kind of running away from tough feelings. Oh man, so much came into focus, And then because he recognizes that that's his type, we were able to sit down and have frank, open conversations that were no longer personal. Like he didn't feel like I was just critiquing him. We were just talking about a particular personality style that he identifies with. Yeah. And it just took the heat out of these conversations, So I could go on and on and on about how helpful it is in families. Awesome. As long as you don't, again, I'm always telling people, be balanced here, right? It's a data point. It's super helpful. It's super useful. A lot of times when people learn the Enneagram at first, it's all they can talk about or think about for about 3 months, and I'm always like, okay, let's just get through that.
What's your number? What's your number?
Exactly. And I'm always like, okay, there's a lot more to people than their personality. But again, the more you can know about the people you love and the more they can know about you, heck, how could that not help?
Amen. Has money gotten in the way of how God can use you? Let me tell you about Tom Love, certified financial planner with the Main Street Group. Tom Love from Tuckahoe Tribe, a.k.a. Doc, can absolutely get you squared away with your finances. My wife and I use Doc to handle our personal finances, and his team is second to none. Tom is a certified financial planner. He's a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro. He's been ranked top 40 under 40. He's been ranked number 2 in Richmond Times-Dispatch. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal. And make sure you mention Men's Alliance whenever you reach out to Doc. He gives Men's Alliance, Tip of the Spear Ministries, a portion of the proceeds when you invest through him. He's a fee-only fiduciary, which means he doesn't make money unless you make money. So check out Tom Love at the Main Street Group. Yeah, man, that's such a great point. So for the guy listening to this, and he's hungry to do exactly what you just described, have a better relationship with his kid or a better relationship with his spouse, do you recommend that person just immediately go to your website and the whole family test? Or should they start with one of your books?
They could do either. I mean, the nice thing about a test is it's going to be, no tests are perfect, right? They all have margins of error, but ours is quite good. We spent a lot of money on research psychologists who put it together. So they can go to my website, ianmorgancron.com, and check that out. Or they can read The Road Back to You, which is my book about the Enneagram, and learn about different types. But can I just tell you a really quick story?
Please,
and then I'll be finished with it. A friend of mine was leading an Enneagram workshop, and at the end of the day, a guy came up to her, and he said, "I've had a revelation." Right? He said, "I'm an 8, so he's a challenger. He's just a hard-nosed dude, right? He's owned a construction company, and he's just a rough and tumble kind of guy." And he said, "I have a son that I have barely spoken to in about 2 years, and I realized today he's a 4." Right now, his son was very much the artist, vulnerable type, talked about his feelings. And dad forever was trying to turn him into a facsimile of himself. This was not a rough and tumble kid. Right. You know what I mean? And it just caused them to be estranged from each other. Like the kid just didn't want to spend any time with dad because dad's always like, "You got to toughen up," and the kid's like, "That's not who I am." You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but here's where the story gets interesting. 2 weeks later, this teacher gets an email from the same guy, this 8 on the Enneagram. And he said, "Look, I just want to let you know how grateful I am because the night that I came home from your workshop, I called my son and he came over to my house and I asked him his forgiveness for not realizing he's just different from me. and that I had wanted him to be, that I thought success as a father was making him like me.
Mm.
And I had made a mistake. And then he went on to say, and then last week, that son was killed in a car accident.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, and though that's tragic and we're grief stricken, he said, if I hadn't learned what I learned at your workshop, he would have died without our being reconciled.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's a lot at stake here in knowing yourself and understanding others.
Yeah.
And because so much of what the breakdown we have in relationships has to do with the way that the different ways that we're wired and not understanding each other.
Yeah. I do believe, that the richness of a life can often be measured by the quality of its relationships. Mm-hmm. So anything that can help us improve our relationships is really of incredible importance. So, man, that's fantastic. And what a powerful story. So, I'm going to now have to get my teenage kids to take the test, and we're going to figure it out more at the Mills house.
Great. You'll have lots of cool conversations, man.
Yeah. And now I know too, I've got to know more than just that I'm a 4. Now I got to know what kind. And I know that there's like triangles within, and there's like heart.
Yeah. Get my book, man, because my book is it's an introduction to the Enneagram. So it's not so deep. Like some books about the Enneagram they're really great in terms of content, but they're like 500 pages and they're really technical. What I would encourage you to do is get my book. It's a friendly read. Give you everything you need to know and get you going on the journey.
And that's the story of you, right?
No, I would recommend the Road Back to You.
The Road Back to You. Okay. That's the place to start. Yep. The Road Back to You, an Enneagram journey to self-discovery. Yep. Okay. So is the story of you, is that the one we should read after?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So we'll start with the Road Back to You. I want to talk to you now, if we can shift gears a little bit about this one right here.
Yeah.
The Fix. This one, so I've done a bit of studying and work in substance abuse and clinical mental health. And so I love the message that you've got going in this book. Share that with us.
Yeah, so the subtitle of the book is How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between.
I love that.
I have been around 12-step recovery since 1987. I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, so I know a lot about substance abuse. My dad was an alcoholic, died from alcoholism when he was 63 years old. And so I've been around the pike here a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a person of faith, and my faith has been so enriched and broadened and improved as the result of working the 12 steps that you hear about in rooms of recovery, like AA or NA or OA, all the different, those kinds of groups that meet in your church basement a lot, right? And I'm like, how come all this good stuff's going on in the basement, but it's not going on upstairs?
I know. Right? I have asked myself that same question.
Right. And I'm like, well, I got to do something about that because guess what? The 12 steps are not just for addicts and alcoholics.
Right.
They're for everybody.
They're for humans.
Exactly. They're just for humans. And I just love the way they're laid out. I love how simple they are and yet how deep they are when you start to work them. And I just know that if more people had access to them, then they would absolutely experience a spiritual awakening, even if they consider themselves spiritual people. Like it could blow the roof off of their experience and give them an even deeper experience of God than the one they currently have.
Yeah, that was a very powerful sentence, right? Mm-hmm. That was a massive statement. And in it, you said spiritually awake, which just always catches my ears, that term, because that's a part of the creed in Men's Alliance, is we are looking to become and remain spiritually awake. And for me, kind of your story about seeing what was going on in the church basement, wondering why it's not happening upstairs. I was always blown away with the radical honesty, and just the realness and the authenticity of people in a 12-step program. And then I would juxtapose that with going to a couple's small group within my church, and it was the opposite. It was everyone being fake, everyone pretending that everything's okay. And I'm like, man, you want to see a real group? You want to see a real group? You go to this. So part of the kind of the DNA built into every Men's Alliance tribe out there is our motto being tribal, rugged, real, is that we're going to be absolutely 100% real about our struggles, and we're not going to pretend that everything's fine. That's really based on all these 12-step groups because they've got it down. And I think that anybody that's ever gone through recovery can smell out fakeness. You can smell fakeness a mile away. You're just more in tuned to it, I think, than the average churchgoer because you've been exposed to such shocking realness. Would you agree with that?
I do. And actually, do you know what's another thing that's so different about what goes on in the basements and 12-step meetings?
What's that?
There's more laughter than there is upstairs. You know, it's not just,
that's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of laughter that goes on downstairs, and it's laughter about our foibles, like the stuff that is not going right. Now, granted, we also have tearful moments.
There's more tears too. Yeah. Well, you're going to have more everything because you're having real emotions.
Yeah. And you're having real conversations. Right. Yeah. And, you know, I would suspect that, I mean, I just wish that everybody had number one, a program like the 12 steps that helps organize their spiritual growth path. Like the path, what the steps do is they mend and improve and deepen your relationship with God, with yourself, and with other people. That's pretty much it. Like, say that sentence again. 12 steps do what? They mend and deepen your relationship with God, with yourself, and with others, and then gives you a plan for making sure that you experience health and growth in each of those three domains of your life going forward. That's it. Everyone thinks the 12 steps are about, how do I stop drinking? How do I stop taking drugs? How do I stop, overeating? How do I stop whatever? That is not the point of the 12 steps. The 12 steps says it all. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. The point of the steps is to help you have a spiritual awakening of sufficient force that you no longer turn to things like porn, gambling, sports betting, perfectionism, people pleasing, whatever your thing is that you do compulsively to fix the pain in your heart, right? Like, it's just going to remove your need for it. You're eventually just going to look at those things and go, I don't need that anymore. Like, I have taken care of the spiritual problem in my heart that those things were trying to fix. Like, so for example, Goose, people always say, oh, Bob has a drinking problem. You've heard that, right? So-and-so has a drinking problem. And I'm like, okay, I understand why you're saying that, but let's just change up the words here. Yeah. Bob actually has a drinking solution.
He has a problem.
Bob has a problem, but it's actually not drinking. And drinking is the solution.
Drinking's his solution.
Right. So you don't have a porn problem. You have a porn solution. Right. And what does that do right away when you frame it that way? Well, suddenly some compassion comes up and some understanding comes up. And you say, okay, so what we have to help, if Bob's willing, we need to help Bob look at the problem that his drinking is trying to solve. And which is a spiritual problem. Yeah. Now, if we can get Bob to do that, the drinking thing's just going to go away on its own. And people say, well, that sounds so simple. I'm like, yeah, well, talk to the tens of millions of people who have experienced it as a result of working the steps in all the 300 or so different, 12-step based programs that are out there. And, you don't have to, you could take this book and the workbook and just get a little group of 5 guys together and do it for 14 weeks and you'd be done. Like it'd be like, you'd have a great experience as a result of working those steps together. Right. Yeah. And, or you could go to a meeting if that's what you need, that existing meetings that are, just go online and go find one and read the book and get to work.
I think one of the important points that your book, The Fix, makes is everybody is addicted to something.
Yes.
Talk about that to the guy listening to this that's saying, well, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I bet you a significant percentage of the guys involved in your program are addicted to porn.
Oh, we talk about pornography all the time.
Yeah.
I definitely, anybody that says they're not, I think they're lying.
Yeah. I just know as a therapist, I get so many calls about it. It's like, right. So we know for a fact that probably just even 10% of the population is substance addicted. Those are just statistics. All right. Now, that's just substances. That's not talking about, so an addiction is an unhealthy, compulsive relationship with a person, a behavior, or a substance that has mood-altering effects and negative consequences. So look at porn. All right. Now, you've got a guy who's like, staying up late at night. He's can't get off of websites, right? He's constantly deleting his search history, a lot of shame, can't stop doing it. Why? Well, because he's got a porn solution. He has internal pain, internal emptiness, loneliness. He has feelings of isolation. He's not well connected to other men. He's, anxious, whatever. He's depressed. And every time he uses porn, what does it do? He gets a dopamine hit, has mood altering effects. Temporarily, he feels better, right? But it has negative consequences. His wife finds out, or she doesn't find out, and he's just living in darkness and shame, right? So on and on and on. But he's in a loop. Now he's stuck in a loop, right? Like and he doesn't know how to get himself out of it. Workaholics. Are you kidding me? Like, I know guys who work 80-hour work weeks at investment banks or construction sites or everybody in between. They can't stop working. They don't realize that they're doing it. They're working that hard because they get a kind of hit of pleasure from money, success, power, prestige. It bolsters their self-esteem. It gives them a sense of power because maybe in some other area of their life, they are lacking in those things. And this is their solution to that problem. And it has negative consequences for their health, to their marriages, to their children, because they're not around enough. They're always distracted thinking about work. I mean, so I could go on and on with this, right? So I just don't know, like, if you're reading the same Bible I am, you are going to know that everybody is an addict. Like, it's just how it is, right? Now, you may be on the mild side of the spectrum or to the severe side of the spectrum, but everybody's on that spectrum somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I would, there's so many behaviors that we can't stop doing, right? And you just think like, I think like just going here on this macro level with you, at a very minimum, I would say we're all addicted to sin.
Absolutely.
Like can you, if you think you're not, can you stop? Can you stop sinning? Like we can't, right? So, and even Paul is saying, the things I want to do, I don't, and the things I don't want to do, I do. So he was struggling. And if he was struggling, then none of us have a hope of not struggling also.
Exactly.
So we're seeing this, right? Like we're all in need of help. We're all in a pretty terrible condition of sin and addiction. And often that's accompanied by shame and secrecy. And part of the problem is when people aren't being real, when they're not in that group that's real, when they're still pretending that there's not a problem, that everything's fine, that they're not, as bad as the next guy. well, that's making it worse. That's kind of driving it further into the dark corners. And that's why step one is put a spotlight on it. Bring it out into the light, say it out loud, and admit it. Admit that you've got this problem and that you're powerless on your own to overcome it.
Exactly, right? And the first three steps could be articulated this way. I can't, step one. Step two, he can. Step three, I think I'll let him. That's basically steps 1, 2, and 3, right? Now, what's interesting is, and maybe you experience this with your groups. I don't know enough about your groups to know what the case is. When you're involved in 12-step stuff, we don't focus on problems. We focus on solutions. Okay? So a lot of times groups of guys will get together and they'll talk about their problems, but that's what the focus will be.
Yeah.
It's not on the solution. It's on the problem. And yeah, you have one of the benefits of doing that is you're coming out of isolation. And addictions and compulsions and things like that, they breed in isolation. Mm-hmm. So I have a mantra. We get sick alone, we get better together. That's just how I see things. We get sick alone, we get better together. Now, it's not enough to just sit around and going, I got a porn problem or I got this problem. It's like, okay, well, what's the solution?
Yeah.
The steps offer a solution to the problem, right? Steps 1 to 3, I'm going to look at my relationship with God. That's first. But then 4 through 7 is, I got some things to do. I got to look at myself. So now I'm going to mend my relationship with myself. And that takes a little bit of work, right? It's about honestly acknowledging what's going on inside of me that is keeping me locked into these kinds of behaviors that just aren't working for me. They're just not serving me, right? And then obviously 8 and 9 has to do with mending our relationship with other people. But it gives a roadmap. It's like a design for living. It's like, okay, I'm glad you're coming out and admitting this and being vulnerable and sharing it, right? But it can't stop there for you to get well. Like, you're going to have to go on this journey of learning about yourself, mending relationships with others, and then coming up with a plan for how to keep health in each of those domains of your life moving forward. And then when you meet with a group of people, it's like, yeah, I've got this problem and I have these tools. And these tools have helped me now to develop the life that I always wanted and that God wanted for me too.
That's so good. I 100% agree with you. Let me ask you your opinion on something. In regards to this, don't stay in the past, move forward kind of thinking. What are your thoughts? What's your opinion on people that, let's say, they haven't had a drink in 30 years, still introducing themselves as, hey, I'm Joe, I'm an alcoholic? Is that staying stuck in the past? Is it time for them to stop identifying with that? I know that that's a popular thing in some recovery communities, but I always cringe at it. I'm like, that's not who you are. You're Joe, son of the living God. Move forward. Don't stay connected to that sin.
I understand what you're saying, and I think there's another way of thinking about it. So part of it is just a tradition, right? It's like just reminding yourself, like, this is the situation here, right? So, but imagine you're in a support group for diabetics, right? Like, you're a diabetic. Like, there's just, you can be a redeemed diabetic, but that doesn't mean you're not a diabetic anymore because you're a redeemed diabetic, right? You still have a glucose intolerance that is causing, if you don't have a program of recovery for your diabetes. Namely, I take insulin and I do this and I don't eat sugar and I watch my carbs and I work out and I do. It's the same thing, right? Like, National Institute of Health recognizes alcoholism as a disease, right, of the mind and body. And we could have a long conversation about that, but suffice to say that I think there is a kind of vulnerability that out the gate when you say, look, this is my struggle, right? Like, now, but I'm not currently an active alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like, I've been freed of that, and I have these tools to help me stay not. And to be clear, the steps aren't there to, like the steps aren't like, don't pick up a drink, don't do this, don't do that.
Right.
That's not what they are. They're focused on spiritual development so that the need for a drink is no longer necessary.
Yeah.
Right. So all about spiritual condition, right? Maintaining spiritual condition. And so it doesn't bother me to say, my name is Ian, I'm an alcoholic. This doesn't bother me at all. I don't see myself as that's the whole of me.
Okay.
I don't even think of it in that category. It's more like, yeah, I'm like you. It's also a way of identifying with the group. It's like, me too,
Yeah.
So I don't assign the level of importance to it that you do, or that others who may share a common kind of thing. And nor do I think anybody in the rooms does. Like,
Good.
Well,
that's good. I like your take on it. Let me ask you this. Where these fields kind of merge, are there any of the 9 Enneagram types that are more prone to addiction than others?
Great question. The answer is like, sometimes I hear people say, oh, Bill's got an addictive personality. And I'm always like, there's no such thing. There really is no such thing. Now, there are traits, I suppose, you could have that might make you more susceptible. Things like poor impulse control, or, low
traits.
Tolerance or frustration, or low tolerance for, difficult feelings or whatever. But I see all 9 types in the rooms of recovery, right? There's addiction is a human problem. It's not a personality problem. It's something everybody struggles with. Just read the Bible. Everybody is looking, right, for a way to fix the uncomfortable feelings that go with being a human being.
Yeah.
And those they may arise from trauma. They may arise from just your temperament. They may arise just from being human. People are at their baseline are anxious, a little depressed sometimes. They stress, you name it. We just have a whole host of stuff that makes us feel uncomfortable in our own skins. And we go looking for ways to make life feel more tolerable, apart from God's love, mercy, and grace.
And that right there I thought that was my favorite part of the fix, is identifying. Even I already knew this, and it was still good for me to read it again, right? Because it's something that I think it's encouraging to be reminded of on a regular basis, is this: you're never going to feel great and at home in this world, because you were not made for this world. And you have a longing in your soul, in your heart, that will never be filled until you are in the presence of God. And I, your quote that you have in your book by C.S. Lewis, it's like we all know that a world exists, even though none of us have ever visited it.
Yes.
We know it's got to be there. And so I find this encouraging, because I have bad days. I struggle some days with depression. Some days I just don't want to do a thing. And it's reassuring to know, you know what? That's a part of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to feel like that from time to time throughout life. So don't freak out. It's kind of normal. And then don't go try to self-medicate and feel better with some sort of substance or harmful behavior.
Yep. And, again, also have some compassion for yourself, right? Like, I'm always, I remember hearing a guy tell the story when he was in treatment for an alcohol problem, right? And he said that the first time he met with the counselor, he had a very traumatic childhood, right? And the counselor said, "I'm really glad you found alcohol." And he looked at her like, "What? Like, are you crazy?" She said, "Yeah, because it kind of like anesthetized all that pain you were carrying for a short season. And now you're here and you're safe, and we're going to deal with that pain directly so that you don't have to use alcohol again. But thank goodness you had it, because it probably stopped you from hurting yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
And I thought, oh, that's a really interesting take. Now, I'm not saying, feel good about your different addictions necessarily, but be compassionate. Like, as crazy, they're just misguided attempts to deal with pain without God's help. That's the misguided part, right? And
misguided attempts to deal with pain without God's help.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And then we get caught in not being able to get out of them.
Right.
And so we need help.
They grow and become a bigger problem than the first problem.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we need, if the gospel is true, then we need a power, namely God, greater than ourselves, who can actually lift us out of the problem. But it requires a plan. If you ain't got a plan, you're going to be stuck in the problem, not the solution.
That's so important, right? And I think 12 steps, I think that appeals to men. It's a checklist, right? It's not very subjective or feelings based. It's here you go. You want a plan? Here's 12 steps. Do these in order, right? So I think there is an appeal to men with a 12-step program. It gives us, like your book's called, it gives us a fix. Okay, here's the roadmap to improvement. Follow these steps.
Yeah, and understand that running your life on your own unaided willpower is a recipe for disaster. It's actually really a big disaster in the spiritual life, right? Like, your will is always getting in the way of the will of God. You know what I mean? Like, your little w will is always getting in the way of the big W will of God. So, so much of the 12 steps is just about teaching you to get out of your own way and to make space for God to get into the deepest part of you and do for you what you can't do for yourself, to make you into the man you want to be. And actually to make you a better man than you ever imagined, because probably your idea of what a good man wasn't nearly as good as you think it is.
That's great. Yeah. Oftentimes our idea is a man who doesn't do these bad things anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right. When actually the better plan is to be a man who doesn't need or want those things anymore, because that hole has been filled with something better. Yeah,
exactly right, man.
Oh man, Ian, this has been such a great conversation, from Enneagram to 12 steps. And I just want to give you an opportunity. Tell people where they can find out more about you and these topics.
Sure. So the book is called The Fix: How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between, meaning everybody. You can get that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever you buy books, right? Bookstores in your town, wherever. Then in terms of just my own stuff, you can go to Ian Morgan Cron, IANMORGANCRON.com. You could get an Enneagram assessment there. You can learn about my other books, and I'm at Ian Morgan Cron on all my socials.
Man, I love it. That's awesome. And we didn't even get into the part about you being an Episcopalian priest. We'll save that for next time.
All right. That sounds good.
I'd love to have you. One. Yeah, we'd love to have you back on again and continue on these topics that can make us better husbands, fathers, and leaders. Ian, thanks for your time, brother.
Thanks, Goose. I appreciate it, friend.
Hey, guys, listen up. I've got huge news. This coming May 2nd through 4th, we are having our first ever Men's Alliance National Rally. This is going to be the biggest, greatest gathering of barbarian ambassadors from every tribe all over the country coming together for one weekend in a state park. You can come camp out or you can stay in a local hotel, but it is going to be an incredible time. We want every tribe across the country to road trip to this rally. We are bringing you the absolute best speakers in the country. Greg Kokel, author of Tactics, founder of Stand to Reason. He will be a headlining speaker along with Stephen Mansfield, New York Times bestselling author of Band of Brothers, which has helped me start Men's Alliance. He's also the author of Men on Fire. We're going to have Pastor Brian Hughes from Passion Community Church there leading us on Sunday morning worship service outdoors. It's going to be incredible. We're going to have the Barbarian Games at the rally Friday night with live metal music performed by Saved by Scarlet. Then Saturday morning is the first national All Tribes. It's going to be epic. Go to our website, click on National Rally, get your tickets. It's going to fill up. It's going to be a great time of outdoor camping, music, workouts, speakers, and sharpening one another. Don't miss the rally. To find out more about what we're doing and to join us on our mission, go to men'salliancetribe.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review.